There's so many organizations doing incredible work in the space, but because of how siloed it had become, a lot of people just didn't know about all the great work that's going on.
I guess that's why the unity thing is so important, because, you know, it's not you alone as a CISO in an organization just trying to protect your organization. You've got to realize how what you do is going to affect others and teach others and learn from others.
It's always the people and how we support them, how we train them, and how we empower them.
How does that knowledge, how has your experience shaped the way you lead and the way you navigate the industry?
AI has exploded absolutely everywhere. Every piece of marketing and every piece of advertising, especially in the tech space, you can't fail to see that it's AI powered or driven by AI, or there's AI in it somewhere.
If I could ask you to maybe give some advice, maybe for leaders who potentially are listening and thinking, gosh, we're not inclusive enough, maybe we're not psychologically safe, how do we start to do that? So, welcome to Momentum, a Business Leaders Accelerate podcast. I'm Clare Forestier, and today we are getting into the human side of cybersecurity, AI and leadership, because for all the conversations about risk and resilience, we often actually skip past the bit that really matters, which is the people in the middle of it. And that's exactly where today's guest comes in. So, Lisa Ventura MBE, welcome to Momentum.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today.
So you have one of these roles that it sounds great, and I'm sure it is, but it's really hard to sum up neatly what you do. I mean, you call yourself, you can say you're founder of Cybersecurity Unity and AI Unity, you're a mental health coach, you're a neurodiversity advocate, you're a cyber awareness and culture specialist. How do you, if you're stuck in a lift with somebody, how do you say, this is me, this is what I do?
You're absolutely right. I'm involved in a lot of different areas, but I've been in the cybersecurity industry since 2009. Around about 2015, I spotted a gap in the market and in the cybersecurity space for a trade association that was solely dedicated to individuals and organizations who actively work within the cybersecurity industry. Now, there are a lot of other bodies that were out there and still are today. For example, we have the Chartered Institute of Information Security. We have the British Computing Society. We have a lot of other different entities, but cyber is a part of them, and they cover a lot of other different areas as well. Whereas the gap I'd spotted was for a trade association that was specifically for individuals and organisations working in the cybersecurity industry. And that's how the UK Cybersecurity Association came to be and was born. So I created that. I grew it as a very successful membership trade association, and also lobbying government for safer internet, for safer digital spaces, etc. And I rebranded the association to be known as Cybersecurity Unity, because I saw firsthand how truly fragmented and siloed conversations around cybersecurity had become in the industry. And there were also, oh my goodness, there's so many organizations doing incredible work in the space. But because of how siloed it had become, a lot of people just didn't know about all the great work that's going on. So I'd often have conversations and I'd talk about, for example, what the National Cyber Resilience Centre network was doing, or what the UK Cybersecurity Council was doing, and people would have absolutely no idea. So the rebrand to Cybersecurity Unity was to really bridge the gap around that disconnect and bring the industry together to, as the name suggests, unite the industry. And so today, Cybersecurity Unity has a directory of everything going on within the cybersecurity space. So, all the great entities, all the projects, all the work that's going on, all the certification bodies, everywhere that you can go to for career pathways, it's all there. And then we meet, every few months, everybody from the cybersecurity industry, from all those key organizations and key bodies. We all get together and we go, right, what are the challenges? What's going on? What are the big cyber attacks that are taking up, media space at the moment? And how can we as an industry do better and be better to prevent and try to stop a lot of what is going on within the cyberspace? And we're never, ever, ever going to get on top of cyber threats. I mean, I think we've seen just in the last few weeks, with Marks and Spencer's, the Co-op, Harrods, Victoria's Secret, Adidas, so many big names are all getting impacted by cyber attacks. It is very, very much it's not an if it's going to happen. It's becoming more of a when. And I've pivoted as well to that whole awareness piece of making sure your organization, no matter how big or how small it is ready and is resilient should a cyber attack come their way.
I guess that's why the unity thing is so important, because, it's not you alone as a CISO in an organization just trying to protect your organization. You've got to realize how what you do is going to affect others and teach others and learn from others, because that's the best way forward. So with the association, it is an association, isn't it? Cybersecurity Unity. So as people are members of an association. Yeah. You talked about what was missing in the industry that made you want to create this. What about what was kind of missing in a human side? Because you've described cybersecurity as deeply human. Mm-hmm. Could you unpack that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the phrases that I hear so much within the cybersecurity industry, and I'm going to caveat this by saying I absolutely hate it, and I will challenge it every time I see it or I hear it, and that's that people are your weakest link. They actually are your biggest line of defense. Because if you can train your people and get them all thinking about their cybersecurity awareness and their cybersecurity posture and how to stay safe online, that will inevitably then cascade down from their personal lives into their work lives and create that environment where people will often, they'll tune out, they'll stop caring. And it's not because that they don't want to do the right thing, but one of the biggest risks that we're underestimating is what I call alert fatigue. So the constant and endless alerts, the change, the overwhelming feeling that it's absolutely impossible to stay ahead. And people as well can get really overloaded and burnt out with information coming at them from all different platforms and all different sides. And I think as well another risk is the tendency that we have to separate cyber from the human dimension. And there's a huge focus on all the software and hardware that can prevent or mitigate cyber attacks should they happen. But we really don't spend as much time as we should on the human factors, such as psychological manipulation, social engineering. So, all those phishing emails, smishing, so text messages that pertain to be from, leading organizations, creating a sense of, urgency, getting people to click on those links that they shouldn't. And also importantly, insider threats. Somebody from within an organization, and it could be a disgruntled employee, for example. And it's always the people and how we support them, how we train them, and how we empower them. That can be the difference between making and breaking our defenses against cyber attacks. And it's something that I do a lot of consultancy work around. And something that I'm really passionate about is training and empowering people to spot those malicious links, those attempts in their tracks.
So yeah, it's really interesting how you talk about that, the fact that it's the overwhelm that comes in, and I can imagine, particularly people with roles in cybersecurity, because we're facing that in our daily lives. If you're then working in cybersecurity, trying to watch where the next danger is coming from, the kind of impact on you emotionally must be hugely must just be almost intolerable. So I guess it's another part of it. I wanted to talk to you as well about AI, because that's everywhere.
Yeah.
We've heard nothing but for the last 18 months in terms of on the news, and I'm sure people in the industry will have been hearing about it a lot longer. You've spoken about deep fakes, voice cloning, the risks which we hear about, but there are also the assumptions around AI which are kind of just as dangerous, aren't they?
Absolutely. And the next evolution of what I'm going to be doing with the Trade Association is creating AI unity as well. So again, going some small way to trying to unite everything and all the entities and organizations that are working actively within the AI spaces as well. And you're absolutely right about, deep fakes, voice cloning, and all that AI generated content. And I think people, with that need to understand that it's not just, about the technology that creates it. It's about the trust that it'll erode. So all this, deep fake and voice cloning and AI generated content, it's all really reshaping how we think about authenticity and identity. And it's not enough to have the best tech to detect deep fakes and prevent that misuse as well. I think leaders in all areas need to have that culture of transparency and really, really question, what's real, and lead by example when it comes to using these tools responsibly. And I'm actually part of the newly created Global Council for Responsible AI, which is about exactly that, because as you've rightly said, AI has exploded absolutely everywhere. And in every piece of marketing, in every piece of advertising, especially in the tech space, you can't fail to see that it's AI powered or driven by AI, or there's AI in it somewhere. But I think it's the genie is out of the bottle with it all, so to speak. And we really need to pause, stop, take that step back, and really look at the responsible and ethical use of AI, because it's not just about defending against all this fake stuff that AI generates. It's about reaffirming what's real and empowering people to be able to just even if they think that for example, business email compromise. I've worked with organizations to embed cyber awareness as part of their onboarding process. And one organization that I worked with really closely on this, they were actually investment backed. And so every time that they had an investment funding round that was successful, and that investment round was subsequently then in the press, that's when the business email compromise or CEO fraud emails against others within the company, that's when it would start to really ramp up. And of course, if somebody's really new, they've just started and they're onboarding and they're just getting to grips with the organization, and they receive an email pertaining to be from the CEO of that organization saying, "Hi there, I just need you to do this task for me, transfer this sum of money or get this gift card." That's when people would get caught out by those kind of business email compromise attacks. So it's really, really important to embed that training. And it's something that I advocate for a lot to organizations. Don't just have your, the compliance and the bare minimum that you have to have cyber awareness embedded in the onboarding process from the very start, so that all newcomers, when they join, they're eager to please. And they'll go ahead and they'll do it if they get something like that. So have that training embedded from the very start.
It's a good point, because as you move through an organization, you're like, oh no, another bit of training. Whereas when you're new, you're like, yay, I want to be really good at this.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. So, I mean, switching here really
Sure.
to you more personally, because you've got such an interesting story yourself. You're very open about being neurodivergent. You didn't even know you were neurodivergent, or certainly didn't have it confirmed until quite late on in your life.
Yeah.
How does that knowledge, how has your experience shaped the way you lead and the way you navigate the industry?
So you're right. For me, I wasn't diagnosed until quite late in life. I was in my early 40s. And my diagnosis didn't come around because I was seeking one, funnily enough. It came about because I was asked to participate in a study that Worcestershire Healthy Minds was doing at the time. And they were looking at undiagnosed autism in women between the ages of 40 and 45. And because I hit the criteria, my GP asked me to take part in the study.
Wow.
And I was diagnosed as being autistic, which was like a huge light bulb moment. And it's like, oh my goodness, that's why I've struggled for so long. And that's why I can't cope with, social interactions. That's why I have significant periods of burnout, why I've struggled to work in an office, why I can't do eye contact. It all made just perfect sense. But I felt that it wasn't the only piece of the puzzle with me. And so I sought a diagnosis for ADHD, which I got an assessment for in January 2023. At that point, my autism diagnosis was reconfirmed. That was absolutely definite. And I was also diagnosed as having ADHD, because a lot of neurodivergent conditions can intersect with each other's and be morbidities with each other. And I was surprisingly also diagnosed with dyspraxia and dyscalculia. So dyscalculia being the opposite of dyslexia, where I have no problem at all with writing and words and reading, all that side's absolutely fine. I have problems with numbers. So, give me a whole sort of spate of numbers and I can't make head or sense out of them at all. So again, knowing that full piece of the puzzle really helped me to, put things in place to get some support. And it also helped my husband to understand that I'm genuinely not being, for example, this might be a really sort of silly thing, but I might leave the lights on, or I might have a mug like this in my hand and it makes its way downstairs to the kitchen, but doesn't make its way in the dishwasher because I didn't think of something else. Leave it on the side. He then comes down and sees it on the side and he's like, oh, why couldn't you just put it in the dishwasher? So it's just things like that. It's helped my husband to understand I'm genuinely not doing it on purpose. It feels like I've got 1,000,000,001 internet tabs open in my head at any one time. And they're all vying for, equal amounts of attention. So it really helped me to understand me and why I am the way I am and why I can be absolutely great in, say, certain work areas, but rubbish in my personal life and around the house and getting things done, for example. So it's really, really helped me to understand. It's helped my husband to understand. And in terms of a truly neuro-inclusive work culture, for me, that would start with curiosity and empathy and not assumptions, because every single neurodivergent person will be different with different needs and will need different types of supporters as well. For me, it would be a place where people don't have to mask who they are to fit in. Goodness knows I masked massively throughout my entire life in every area of my life, just to try and fit in and understand a lot of these societal rules that change every second and that I just didn't understand as well. And an analogy I use to explain that one is I'm a huge fan of sci-fi, and Star Trek's one of my favourite series, particularly the original series. And at the end of a lot of the episodes of the original series, you get Captain Kirk, you get Spock and McCoy and Scotty, and they're all having one of them sort of cracks a bit of a joke, usually at Mr. Spock's expense, and they're all having a bit of a laugh. But Mr. Spock's just stood there like this, and he's like. And you can just see he's just like, I don't get it. I don't understand this joke. I don't understand, why they're laughing. And that is exactly how I feel. I have to really mask to to fit in and understand and so on. So that analogy is one that I use a lot to explain it, because it really does feel sometimes like I'm a Vulcan on Earth, or I'm an alien from another planet, and I've just been put on this planet and I have no clue about these societal rules and norms and unspoken, things and small talk. Yeah, it's a struggle.
And I suppose it's interesting as well, having a late diagnosis and making you realize that so many other people will be feeling this, even if they are not recognizing themselves as neurodivergent, or even if they're not been given a diagnosis. And I suppose, I mean, one of the things it makes me think about, I've not been given a neurodivergency diagnosis, but that concept that people I have judged in the past or felt were acting weird or a bit didn't get something, I would have felt I had a harsh judgment on that person, or a judgment maybe around their personality that now makes you realize actually that was just, they were trying to do that. So I suppose it makes you very much more empathetic to everybody in the workplace.
Absolutely. And it helped my, when I was diagnosed, it actually helped my husband with one of his close friends, who my husband would get really, really frustrated, with, in terms of, how this guy was, how he comes across, how his autism is so bad. He's actually not been able to sustain, working, and he's never been nurtured or given those opportunities to be able to work from home and do what he loves with computers and so on, until quite recently. But my husband used to go and see our friend, and he'd come back and say, "Oh, he won't do this or he won't do that," and it's really frustrating. And it's helped my husband understand that James is neurodivergent with autism and ADHD, but in a very different way to me, and how he's much more impacted, by it as well. But he can also see some key similarities. So yeah, it's really helped, just in terms of even my husband understanding and getting that empathy, and not having that frustration, and understanding that we can't help it. We don't want to be like this. It's just, it's the way that we are. And we just can't help being that way.
Yeah, I guess you sort of look at many other people in your life and think, oh, that's probably why this and that. Yeah. And which is going to make you definitely a better leader. In terms of something else that you've done, which I really love, it kind of really struck a chord with me, and I'm sure it will other people, is you founded International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day, which sounds funny but is actually brilliant. What led you to that?
Well, I actually co-founded the day with myself and two really close friends, Nat Schooler and Kim Adele, who are accomplished coaches and podcasters, and very much involved in the tech and digital space. And I was always struck with these, through everything I ever did, and particularly in the cybersecurity industry and space, I was always struck with these feelings of, I'm a fraud and they're going to find me out at any second, or, that opportunity wasn't meant for me. They meant to ask somebody else. And I didn't realize until around the pandemic hit that it actually was a thing, and it had a name. And so Nat, Kim and I actually launched an awareness day around it in 2021 to really open up the conversation, because we all knew firsthand how, isolating and damaging those feelings of not belonging and feeling like a fraud could be. So I wanted to create that safe space, to start those conversations, to break the stigma, and to remind people that they're not alone in having those feelings. And the reaction's been incredibly positive, and overwhelming. And people from all different industries and all walks of life have been reaching out to us to say, I've felt this way for years and I didn't know what it was, and I never knew how to talk about it. So it's really shown me how powerful it is, when we acknowledge, how vulnerable that we are, and create those spaces where people can feel safe to share their experiences. And interestingly as well, I've been doing a couple of pieces of research around imposter syndrome, in terms of, are those who are neurodivergent, are they more likely to have higher levels of imposter syndrome in comparison to their neurotypical counterparts? And I firmly believe that yes, that's the case. I'm also doing a piece of research as well to look into levels of imposter syndrome in those that have been exposed to narcissism, or those with either narcissistic personality traits or narcissistic personality disorder, so the full-blown version of it. And I myself certainly have. I've even had that exposure from those with narcissistic personality disorder from within my family, to friends, to in the workplace. And I'm also doing a piece of work around the link between narcissism and levels of bullying and abuse that people will experience, because I guarantee that 9 times out of 10, those that are the perpetrators, that are the bullies and the abusers in the workplace or generally in life, will have very high narcissistic personality traits, or worse, the full-blown disorder. So it's an interesting piece of work that I'm doing at the moment.
It's fascinating. I'm interested in the imposter syndrome idea. I mean, have you done research around, is it something that is more female? Do women hold it more than men? Or, I mean, particularly if you could consider that our business workplace was not originally a place where women succeeded. I wondered if there's anything around that.
Absolutely. So yes, it does seem to be that women are more impacted by feelings of imposter syndrome, and especially coming from the cybersecurity and tech space and industries where traditionally, women are a small minority. I mean, even in cybersecurity today, the latest stats is that there's around 25% women in the cybersecurity industry. So we have a massive and long way to go. I mean, it's getting better, but we still have a long way to go to attracting more women and, people from minority backgrounds into the industry. But there are some men who reached out as well. And I actually had the pleasure of interviewing a few men for this year's International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. It doesn't discriminate. Anybody can have those feelings of imposter syndrome. I've definitely found that there are a lot more men who are neurodivergent who also have feelings of imposter syndrome. So that sort of links into the research I've done in terms of the link between imposter syndrome and those who are neurodivergent. But it definitely affects both men and women alike.
Of course, no, of course. I just was wondering if there was if you were seeing it more in women, or particularly women leaders. I suppose it all ties into, you've learned all this, you've understood this about yourself, you're doing all this work. If I could ask you to sort of maybe give some advice, maybe for leaders who potentially think they're listening and thinking, gosh, we're not inclusive enough, maybe we're not psychologically safe. How do we start to do that?
I think for me, it would be just to empower everybody and treat everybody as individuals with individual needs, and create those safe spaces within your workplace as well. So, have those employee resource groups. I've led them as well, and I've actually run employee resource groups for those with neurodiversity, for women at key organisations. So I've looked at where those gaps exist. I've also run the LGBTQ plus one. I admit I'm not from that background, but I am an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, and so I've been involved in running those employee resource groups at organisations that I've been with, so that everybody, regardless, gets that voice and feels included. That's the most important thing that you can do. And one of the things that I've rolled out in a couple of organisations, and I would love to see this rolled out everywhere, and this goes for everybody, is everybody should have what I call almost like a sort of passport, if you like, of this is what I need as an individual to help me function and do the best that I can at my job. So it could be, my name is Lisa and these are the things I need in the workplace. And for me, that could be things like a bit of downtime in between meetings to, just gather my thoughts and, make sure I'm clear about what actions that I've got. It could be things like, not working in the office 5 days a week. I mean, I work solely from home and go to meetings every now and then. It could be things like just looking at your environment and, checking that the colours aren't too bright, or you haven't got sort of patterns, or, things that might sort of, from a sensory overload perspective, I couldn't cope with that. And I know a lot of other people wouldn't be able to either. So just, taking each individual and empowering them and allowing them to be able to, work at their best. For example, they might want to have, meetings in the morning because they're more alert, rather than in the afternoons. So they might be more of a morning person than a sort of afternoon, evening person. Just things like that can make such a difference.
And I think we're all learning with that kind of concept that I think the Americans call it, don't they? The curb cutting effect, making those changes for people who you know have stated that they have a concern around it and have recognized that in themselves. For those people who maybe haven't, it is also helping them too, because actually the concept of back-to-back meetings and everything else is not good for anyone, regardless of if they have a recognized neurodiversity or they know in themselves what stresses them out. So it's actually going to make it a better workplace for everyone, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So to end with a bit of hope and joy, I'm going to ask you quickly for something that's really giving you hope that things are working in the right direction.
Absolutely. So for me, what gives me a lot of hope is that more people are speaking up. And they might be speaking up about, neurodiversity, their struggles with mental health, about the human side of security and AI. And I'm seeing, big improvements in how we talk about these issues, and moving away, I think, from buzzwords and box ticking to real meaningful action. And that's despite a lot of what I'm seeing and hearing about stateside, in terms of a lot of diversity and inclusion programs being axed. There's still a lot of growing awareness that diversity of thought is a strength and not a challenge. And there's a big appetite out there as well to listen, to learn, and to adapt. And it's not perfect, and we have a long way to go. And I do speak to a lot of people as well about drowning out. And if there's one thing I would absolutely and utterly get rid of if I, was in charge and I had the chance, I would ban the comment section on all the newspapers, and especially ban it on the Daily Mail and places like that. I absolutely would. I understand the commenting aspect on platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn and X and so on, because that's what they were designed for in the first place. But opening up the comment section on all the mainstream media, so there's trial by media and people sort of online trolls and saying people just say things when they're sat with a keyboard that they just wouldn't say to people's face. So I would love to see all of that just shut down, but I know it won't be, because they generate the headlines to get clicks and so on, and that's what it's all about from them. But that's something I would love to change. But I think the conversations we're having now would have been perhaps unimaginable a decade ago. So we are making progress, and that definitely gives me hope for the future.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. Well, look, before we wrap, it's time for your quick fire 5, when we just ask for your kind of instinctive answers around a couple of things, nothing to do with AI and security. So I'm going to start with, what is your go-to comfort watch, maybe your guilty pleasure when you just want a break? I think we might guess what it is.
Actually, I've got so many. And if I've got to pick one, I just couldn't do it, because I really do have so many. But I actually have a guilty pleasure of being a huge fan of the soap operas of the 1980s, particularly from the States. So Dallas is my all-time favorite. I could watch that show over and over again. And I also love Dynasty, Knots Landing, Falcon Crest, The Colbys, all of those shows from the 80s. Sci-fi as well. Babylon 5, I love. Star Trek, I love all of those.
I don't know when you have time to watch them all, because you sound like a busy lady.
But I just sometimes will just get an episode and just watch an episode sometimes, and that just really. And I'm massively into my martial arts, so Cobra Kai, that's another one, and Karate Kid. I'm absolutely mad about those.
I like there's a lot of retro there, isn't it? Maybe going back to a period of time in your life. What's your most used emoji? Do you use emojis?
I do, yes. And I actually have the I like the sort of the beaming smiley face. I use that one the most, I think.
I shouldn't ask that question. I'm absolutely terrified of what emoji somebody might say to me one time. What is the best thing about working from home for yourself as you do?
For me, it's the fact I can get so much done. I'm in my own space that I've curated with my own colour schemes, my own things around me. And I'm not beholden to, what I mentioned earlier, those patterns, different colours, things that in an office perspective. And the fact that I don't lose out on time commuting. So I do often start about sort of 8:30 after I've been out for a walk with my dog, and then I'll stop for lunch just like everybody else does. Spend some time with her as well, perhaps go for another little walk. But I'm just so much more productive in my own space.
I want to ask you, what's the one bit of advice that you give other people that maybe you ignore yourself?
Oh my goodness. I would say the importance of getting regular meals and that eating sort of 3 times a day, because I'm absolutely dreadful with breakfast. I'll just get into work and then my mind just goes in hyper focus mode. Next thing I know, it's lunchtime and I haven't eaten, so I really do need to sort that one out.
Oh yeah, I'm very guilty of that one. And then what is the one thing you've done recently that brought you joy?
Oh goodness. So before I got into cybersecurity, I actually founded a literary festival in what was going to just be Worcester, where I lived. It ended up being for the whole of the county of Worcestershire. And because of a absolutely awful experience of bullying and abuse back at the time, I walked away from it, and I've just this year got back into doing some creative writing, some poetry, which is something else I love doing in my spare time. And I launched my first poetry book called The Show Must Go On. So that brought me an incredible amount of joy to do that and get back into spoken word and going to some poetry events. And I've even got thoughts and ideas of launching a new literary festival, because when I walked away from the one that I founded, it sort of died a death and doesn't really happen all that much. So I'm thinking of launching something new. So it's a bit sort of watch this space on that one. And that brought me a huge amount of joy.
Oh, lovely. That's really nice. So thank you so much, Lisa, for joining me. We will pop all the links to Cybersecurity Unity, AI Unity, and Lisa's upcoming book in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a colleague or a team member or a family member, anyone that could use a more human perspective on security and leadership. And don't forget to follow or subscribe to Momentum wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.